Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever it is that you are located in the world. This is your two most favorite quality assurance people in the hospitality industry. And this is WTF Walk the Floors, where we discuss all things hospitality training. I'm Michele Kline. I'm a coach at Kline Hospitality. I'm here with my co-hostess, Stephanie Leger from First Race Hospitality. Stephanie, why don't you take us away through this new journey about spa?
Yes, thanks, Michelle. Well, I feel like our intro music should have been more serene to go with our spa
You
setting.
are right. How did we not think about that?
Well, welcome back, everyone. And Stephanie Leger with First Rate Hospitality. And we're so excited to be talking about spa, considering in June it is Wellness Month and also to getting ready for Global Wellness Day. And so happy to have on as our guest speaker Rose Bauti with her studio, Rose Bauti Studio, located in Connecticut. Thanks, Rose, for joining us.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here. It's a gorgeous day here in Fairfield, Connecticut, and I'm so excited.
Perfect. Yes, I mean it's great kickoff that you guys are starting to start your season as we in Florida starting to close down a little bit or become a little bit slower of our season. And so Rose, tell us a little bit about your background and journey in the spa industry.
So I've worked for a few different five-star hotels in food and beverage and then in spa as well. So interesting combination, but I started way back in the day where you'd kind of do a lot of lateral service. You could be in 5 different places and, so many different angles. So, but the last 17 years I've been with spa. And it's just been amazing. I'm an esthetician. I also did the front desk and sales. But the last year, I opened my own studio in Fairfield, Connecticut, just a short while outside of Manhattan, New York. And we opened during COVID. So very interesting time to open a business, but it's been fabulous.
Wonderful. And explain a little bit more because we can see that we're in your studio, which is a great view, very serene.
Well,
And
so
how did
hold
you?
on. For those of you who can't actually see it,
Yes.
Oh, right. Yes, it is.
we have to get used to the fact that we are on all major podcast platforms now, right? But I want to describe what I can see behind Rose. And when Stephanie asked her to walk us through her background a little bit, all I was thinking was, oh my gosh, that place looks amazing. Like literally her background, right? So she is sitting in these super serene looking, beautiful views, kind of in the middle of a forest.
Mm-hmm.
It does, I have to say, have kind of this rainforest vibe. And it's interesting because, now everything is green, but we are sitting in a screened in porch that I had these plexiglass panels put up. So you can remove them, whether it's, hot out. If it's cold, we put in a heater that makes it nice and toasty. I've done treatments in here where everything is white with snow. And you kind of feel like you're at a lodge. When it rains, you get to see it and you're not soaking wet. So we really have been proud with like the nature element, which as we've discussed is so much of the spa vibe, right? I mean, we've been to some of these places, especially if you're in an urban area where they will kind of paint trees on the wall. So you get that element of nature. And we're just kind of lucky to have that naturally here.
And it's lovely because it truly adds value to creating that memorable experience that we are all after.
I think so. I really do. I mean, so many times, I have to say, working in spa, especially having been in New York City for a while as well, like you are dealing with people that are usually racing to their appointment. super stressed out, crazy workload, no time for themselves. And then when they come here, they kind of just fall on the table. And, it's so great because you get to hear the birds sing. It forces people to kind of connect, where I'm sure we've all met many people that barely make eye contact with you when they're checking in at the front desk and throwing you their keys to get their car, just that kind of element. So it's like we make you stop, and it's great.
That's amazing. So we always start off with, talking about a WTF moment. So we would definitely want to be able to showcase some spa WTF moments when the leaders should have been walking the floors or even from a guest experience. So tell us one of your WTF moments in the spa.
Okay, I have to say, this is going way back now. As I mentioned, I've been an esthetician for 17 years. 20 years in hotels and hospitality environments. And this is year one for me that we're going back. So I'm going to take you back here. I had been working in New York, and then I would go out to the Hamptons in the summer and work out there because, it kind of ebbed and flowed with the seasons. And I was newly out of aesthetic school, didn't have anything really on my resume other than a few little things. And this gentleman that had a hair salon had a room in the back. This is in Sag Harbor, New York, where yachts are coming and going, and people that have, very culture. They've been to all elements of the world, all places of the world, and they're pulling into Sag Harbor and going to experience the town. And I had rented this room in the back to get some experience, and it was pretty quiet most of the time. Summer, everyone kind of wanted to be outside. And I would kind of ask, does anyone need anything to do? Again, I came from lateral service where you kind of had your hand in everything, and I didn't really want to just be sitting around. So one day it was really busy in the salon, and the owner just said, I have this VIP. Can you please just shampoo her hair quickly? I'm late to cut her hair. And I said, sure, I shampoo my hair every day. I'll do that.
How hard could that be?
Be confident, no problem. You don't have to tell me anything else. I'm on it, kind of thing. And I went over, and she's in this beautiful blouse, crisp white collar, and, barely making eye contact with me. Her hair already looked flawless. Like she didn't even have to be there. But she tilted her head back, and I'm feeling good. I'm shampooing. We finish, and she gets up, and I see that I had the whole back of her white shirt was soaking wet.
Oh no!
To the point where I had to replace the shirt. But I think about that often because I wasn't given much guidance. It was just kind of like, hey, can you do this? And, the owner knew I didn't have any experience in hair. I did skin. So I wish myself that I had asked questions, So I always tell people, I'm like, don't be afraid to ask questions, because I would have set myself up for success instead of, being traumatized. And she gave me this look like I was never coming near her again. And I didn't blame her, So that was one of mine that kind of stays with me. And feel of that.
Oh, and I think also when we're given direction from someone else or from leadership, and then you're hearing the how quickly they're saying it to you in their voice, that you feel that you also too need to rush the service as well, because they're rushing it to telling you, and you're like, okay, I need to rush it as well, and not really taking the time to being like, okay, this is the service that the guest expects, and then being able to perform it to its fullest, instead of just, okay, they told me to, rushing it, so now I should rush it, and then not looking at it from everything of A to Z and being like, oh, maybe I should have put a towel, to protect her. But yeah, and sometimes we make mistakes, and especially when we're still young in our career. But now, how do we recover of going through the steps of apologizing, taking care of the shirts, and so that's also too adds a lot as well on the recovery side.
Absolutely. Yes. I took that shirt when she was getting her hair cut and ran to the dry cleaners, and just, the look of fear on my face. The woman was like, don't worry, this is fixable. It wasn't a glass of wine, but it just, like paralyzed me.
And I'm sure now too that throughout your 17 years in the spa, and now when you're training other new staff members, of making sure that, like you were saying, I'm going to ask you, do you have any questions? Let's make sure that we're reviewing this, to avoid any mistakes, while they're starting out.
Yeah, and checking for understanding. How important is that? Because you may
Yes.
say, do you have any questions? And they're like, yeah, we're great. Well, how about you walk me through it?
Totally.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's also too is, you ask, as the person that's doing the training, you ask the questions, and then the person responds back saying, no, I'm fine. And then you're like, okay, they said they're fine. They're ready to go out and be on their own without reviewing it. And like how you said, Michelle, is saying, okay, now you show me, without me saying anything, to seeing how that looks. Because most of the time, all of a sudden, they'll get stage fright the first time that they're having to do it on their own, and being like, oh yeah, I probably should have asked some more questions.
100%. I mean, I work in an industry, skincare, where now, there are so many different modalities and products. And I mean, quite frankly, at times we're putting acid on people's faces. So ask questions. If you have questions, it is not worth, the effect that it can have if you don't feel confident, or at least clear.
Yes.
Confidence will come with experience, but you want to have that clear path of what you need to do, the steps rather, and then you can execute. But yeah, want to know those steps.
What's your story, Stephanie?
So mine is, well, first off, also like on it, I have like two. So one is to be talking about, as the auditor, when I come in, I like, the spa is probably one of my most tense moments, because I have to remember everything, and I can't like, oh, let me write around my notes, or let me be on my cell phone.
You can't even bring your cell phone. It's so hard to do it. Exactly. You gotta remember it all.
Yeah, so I would go in, and it would be like, okay, fine, I just want aromatherapy massage, I like, just give me a treatment. I have a lot of things, tough life when you're like, just give me a treatment to get me out of here.
Yeah.
But then the esthetician, or the staff member, would always be like, relax, this is the spa. And look, I'm like saying to myself, stop talking to me, I have to remember everything, and like keep repeating myself of like proper verbiage. How are they describing the treatments? And like, did they do the steps? Did they anticipate? Did they do this and this? I'm like, okay, 60 minutes, we can do this. And she'll be like, relax. I'm like, yeah, just concentrate more on the like lower back area, not the shoulders, because I'm like so tense. But it's like a little inside of, when you're mystery shopping in the spa department. But it's like one of the hardest ones to really remember all the steps of service, exactly what happened, and then being able to write in. So I'd be like the one that's like running every like 5 minutes back to my like locker, like, oh, just checking, writing my notes. But yeah, side note from that. So my WTF moment though with the spa is, so this was also too very early on into my career as well. And we had a well-known person that was visiting. She visited our property often, so she was well known around the property, and really kind of treated as if it was her own home. And so one time she was going
That's
into
the whole
this.
point of hospitality, right?
Yes.
whatever resort you were at, they were creating that experience, that level of experience that she felt like she was at home.
Yes, exactly. It's your home away from home.
Yes. Yeah.
So here she is having her treatment, and now is going into the sauna. And when you're going into the sauna, you have the water with the ladle to curate some more with the water. And so she decided to basically demand that no, you don't put water, you put oil onto the rocks. So now here we are where you're like, as a staff member, do I go through with it? Because, like, am I going to lose my job because I said no to her, even though that's like the worst safety job, and not being trained properly of how, that's like a no, like huge no. So anyway, so the staff then proceeds to go on with doing what the guest had demanded. And now, within 5 seconds, we have the fire alarm going off. There is smoke coming in between the lights. And now it is not the guest's fault, because it never is, but now it is our fault that we now had extreme damage in the spa, and all because of improper training on the service of what happens if you mix the oil, and then also of how do you politely say no to a guest as well. So
That is
that
just
was
amazing. Now, what a great opportunity for leadership in that position to think through what just happened, because the team member gets pushed against a wall by the guest. I'm here to create the most memorable experience. It's what's bringing in that team member's head. But at the same time, when in doubt, ask. So was there a culture of asking questions? Was there a culture of feedback when that team member was there to make that decision? Because if he or she, I think you said it was a he, would have asked, then someone may have taken the lead and this whole thing could have been prevented.
Yeah. And I think, and also too, of using the equipment properly. So you're like, oh, a steam room, you know how to use it. If you know how to use one steam room, you know how to use them all. But that's not true. Every, amenity is different. Every product, Rose, how you were talking about, you using harsh chemicals at times like acid, depending of the treatments. And, it's really important to knowing the ins and outs and the do's and don'ts with your product, as well as with your amenities and services. Always the fireman will show up, or a lawsuit. God love those lawsuits coming in.
Yeah, that's quite a story, I have to say.
Never a dull moment. Never a dull moment.
No. All right, Michelle, give us your WTF moment with the spa.
So my WTF moment wasn't really a moment. It was the whole experience, unfortunately. So I was on an assignment and I could not blow my cover. And like you were saying, Stephanie, we go in and we can use our phone, right? So putting it in this little baggie, super awesome, like to start creating that memorable experience of disconnecting. So you put it in your little baggie and you're not supposed to go back to it. Right. The problem was that there were so many things that went sideways during this experience that it was practically impossible for me to grasp them all and remember them all until I got out of there and was able to start making some notes. But from the moment I arrived, checking was an absolute mess, right? And this was a very well-known brand with in the middle of a very beautiful location where there were trees and there was a lake and it was just the perfect place, right? But the experience was terrible. So from checking, the person that was on the other side of the desk, number one, wouldn't make eye contact until I found a way for that person to make eye contact. Number two, they couldn't find my reservation. Then I end up the only person that was amazing was the one who the front desk passed me on to show me the amenities around, which is typically like your locker room attendant. She was great. But then she walks me over to the relaxation room. Oh, there was hair on my robe. Fabulous. Great touch. He
No,
walks me over to the relaxation room, and the relaxation room had a vent that had this crazy rattling noise. And I kept on trying to relax and think to myself, no one hears this. Like, you can probably hear it from the front desk. It was that bad, right? The other thing is all the blinds were closed. And I thought this is so strange because this place is located in such with views all over. All the blinds were closed. After the experience, I went around the building to try to figure out, did the closure of the blinds have anything to do with the fact that maybe, I don't know, they're storing things outside, or there's a building that is halfway built outside, so then the view is being obstructed or whatnot? No, they just missed it. So those things that create that memorable experience, like Rose's studio, right? The minute you walk in there, you're like, this is lovely, right? They weren't leveraging that. And they were leveraging that because there was no one looking. There was no management around to be able to feel what the guests could probably feel. And then the story goes on with um, the technician who same thing, like it wasn't what I had booked. So then we had to revisit that. So truly the entire experience was a complete disaster, not like the brand at all. And it was hard for me to put it all on paper.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a shame. I mean, and these places are not cheap, you know.
No.
And luckily, usually when you are doing, it's covered by your company or whichever when you're secret shopping. But, I try to remember that for a lot of people, we have our regulars, but for some people, it's a major stretch as far as time, but money. I mean, spas are not cheap.
No.
Want to really, like you're saying, Michelle, you hit all those, you make it special
Right.
instead of
From having access to the pool, to having access to the relaxation room, to perhaps meeting halfway and having a co-ed space and what that looks like. And, and when we go out there and we do these audits, we're looking at everything. We're looking at the corners, we're looking at the edging, we're looking at how fluffy your pillows look. The whole thing, right? Or when you're standing at the desk, I don't know, Stephanie, if this ever happens to you, but I'm standing at the desk waiting to be checked in, and I'm looking at all the product that is laid out on the shelves. And when you can see the dust laying on the product, I get it that perhaps your public spaces department is not going to be cleaning those because they can't touch the product, but you've seen no one come in and out of the spa for the last 30 minutes. Couldn't you teach that attendant that is checking you in to dust the product while nothing's happening? So again, get outside the desk, from behind your desk so that you can stop these WTF moments and create those memorable experiences.
Absolutely. And it's great that we have such different stories, but all very, similar into the training piece and walking the floors and looking at the surroundings and the ambiance from that guest point of view with walking the floors. This has been great. But Rose, I want to talk a little bit too what you're seeing now. We're post COVID. And where the trends that you're seeing now in the spa industry, since a lot more on the workplace and self work as well, having that wellness and in the spa. So where are you seeing some trends now that are coming out?
I have to say, well, I have a tip for everyone, but then I also think, it's interesting opening up my own studio during COVID. I think at first, even myself, I kind of thought like, is this weird going to a building where, you know, it's attached to someone's house, or I just have heard of a lot of people opening up smaller studios, whether they're converting their garage into a chiropractic studio and fitness center. And, you know, I think we used to think of these huge buildings with every luxury, everything, but there is a nice private element to, you're not running into anyone, you don't have to dress up, you're not wearing your makeup when you leave for a facial. We do extractions, you're blotchy, and, you know, people kind of just come out of here and it's very private. So I have heard of quite a few businesses around this area that have opened up, you know, at people that were paying rent during COVID and didn't know when they could reopen and at what capacity. So we love our large spas, and believe me, it's the first space I want to go to and did go to when the world opened up. But I think these kind of micro units, if you will, many with still amenities, but it feels more private. It feels more personal and more customizable in a nice way too.
Awesome. So what's that tip? I'm always about a nice
I do want people to check their products. Check your expiration date. You know, I have to say I've heard of a few businesses, some super high end, which I know is always surprising, but a lot of product just kind of sat on shelves for years during COVID, and it's expensive to have to toss that. So, you know, check your expiration date. If you are at Sephora, Ulta, Bloomingdale's, Saks, anywhere, look and make sure you're buying something that, first of all, is not expired, because who wants to pay for an expired product? So yeah, check your products.
No,
So
that's a
maybe
great
that's a good tip for the brands to start injecting into their audits as well.
Mm-hmm.
Great idea. Yeah, because I really, it's unfortunate and a shame, but I have heard of some big names in New York that were kind of just pushing old product because they already took such a big hit, as so many industries did during the pandemic. But, you know, as a consumer, you want to get something that's effective. And unfortunately, skincare, the longer it sits on a shelf, the more, you know, the less it's going to do on your skin.
Wow. Well, that is a good tip.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else to add on, Rose or Michelle, before we start wrapping it up?
I'd love to know, Rose, where is your studio? Can you tell people where your studio is at and how they can find you if they're in the area?
Of course. So we are in Fairfield, Connecticut, 06824. We're located around a lot of little cute towns, right an hour outside of New York City. So there's public transportation to get here. You can make a day of it. A lot of really cool cultural things going on. They have a fine arts fair this weekend here in Westport. So it's fun. Nice town to get to check out. And when I lived in New York, I didn't really know much about it. So it's nice to add that to your radar. And we have a website, which is www.rosebauatistudio.com. And I'm on Instagram at Rose Bauti Studio, where I try to just give a lot of little tips. And my whole thing is kind of keeping it simple. You know, I think in the beginning of the pandemic, we had all this time. We were doing every mask on the shelf. And, you know, now people are kind of just tired. It's like you want one thing that works, you know, a week. And so you don't need 20 products. We try to keep it simple, keep it somewhat affordable, if that's possible, for skincare, and just some little tricks that make a difference.
So if tired is the right way to describe the people who are a one-step type of skincare person, then I've been tired my entire life. This has nothing to do with COVID. So thank you very much for that. I am going to definitely follow you on Instagram at Rose Bauti T Studio, because I need those simple steps and tips. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. We all do. You know, there's so much out there. It's really one thing. If we have time, I'll show you. This is called a Gua Sha, and you talked about trends and tips, and a lot of companies are now coming out with these devices, if you will. These, it's funny, like with most trends, this is ancient. It's from, it had its moment centuries ago. This is ancient Chinese, invented the Gua Sha, which just relieves tension. So it's something that is super easy. If we grind our teeth at night, you know, if you have stress, you said you carry, Stephanie, all your stress, you know, it does lymphatic drainage. You could keep it in the fridge or freezer if you've had too much soy sauce and or wine the night before and your eyes are puffy. So Michelle, you were saying one step, this is it. It's $10. I mean, they make ones that are $100, but I sell the one that's $10, which is just fine.
Wow.
Awesome. And we'll make sure that we put the link to it on the comments so that anyone who needs this, like me, can actually indulge. Thank you so much, Rose, for your insight, for your tips. This was great. We hope that your business continues to grow, and we're excited for you. And most definitely, when you're in that area, you have to check out her studio because the views are just gorgeous.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Rose.
Thank you both. This was a pleasure.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.